Dubey sir, now you can start your video.
Okay, so good evening, friends. We'll start with a video of Krishnaji on what is love. And it's a short video about half an hour. And after that, we'll have a dialogue around the discussion. So I'll just share that video with you. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
To ask questions is not to find an answer, but to discover.
During the past 4 decades, the talks and writings of Krishnamurti have stimulated and profoundly challenged audiences in Asia, Europe, and America. During a series of public talks given in the Ojai Valley in California, Krishnamurti, for the first time, permitted the presence of film cameras. This series of 8 programs is the result. As always, Krishnamurti addresses himself to questions which most directly affect our lives. The subject of this, the 5th program in the series, is what is love?
Becomes naturally expectant, awaiting, and therefore not clear, decisive, and capable of discovery. And when one asks questions, one has to also to find out why one asks. I feel one should ask about everything. But it matters very much why one is asking those questions. What's the background? What is the state of the mind that is asking those questions? Is it awaiting an answer or expecting to be told? If it is waiting for an answer, who is going to answer? And a mind that's waiting to find the answer is not an active mind. It's just waiting, expecting. I think then, when we do put a question, it becomes very important. Then such questions have a catalytic effect. They produce an answer in themselves. So let's proceed to find out the questions we're asking. We know what aggression is. We know what violence is, jealousy, and all the rest of it, which is again a form of energy, an expression of energy. And we must also find out, mustn't we, what love is. Now, how does one find out? Not if the energies are similar, but what love is. Is love pleasure? Desire. Are you waiting for me to answer it? So how does one find out? All is love, an energy of a different, in a different field altogether. Of a different quality, a different dimension. And how does one find what love is? Not intellectually, not argumentatively, not splitting it up, saying divine, physical, and all the rest. How does one find out the nature of that thing? Will the conscious mind find it out? The conscious mind being the educated, sophisticated, the mind that has so many experiences, memories, stored up resentments, hatreds. Huh? Love is a surplus when one's own problems are solved. We are trying to find that out. Don't let us speculate what love is. That becomes challenge. How does the mind come upon that thing without conscious effort? If I make a conscious effort to find it out, then my conscious effort must have a recognition of what it is. I must have already known it. I must already smelt it, tasted it, known the quality. And if I know it, it's merely a memory. And this memory which is of time and has that memory and time anything to do with love. So how does one find that? Come on. You understand am I making myself clear? It's like inquiry into there is such thing as God. Within quotes, that word God is so heavily loaded that has almost lost all its meaning. If one wants to discover if there is or if there is not, how does one proceed? Obviously, to find out, all types of belief must come to an end. And therefore, which means all form of fear must come. Sure. No? Belief is a form of hope. And I hope because I'm in despair. And I invent a belief, a security, a state of mind, which says there is something which is permanent. And I believe it. And that belief, obviously, not only conditions all examination, all perception, but it prevents the total inaction. I must not only be free of every form of belief and therefore fear, and also my mind must be so sharp, so sensitive. May this sensitivity brought about by right eating and behavior, physical condition, all that. Then only there is a possibility of discovering something. So it seems to me in the same way to find out or come upon this thing called love, which is so heavily loaded. One must inquire into this question of pleasure and desire. We're not trying to suppress desire. The monks throughout the world have tried that. And those so-called religious people have attempted to control desire because some authority, a religious authority, is saying, be free of desire. Because desire leads to bondage. So, so-called spiritual people, whatever that word may mean, those people have tried to either to suppress, eliminate, or sublimate it by identifying themselves with a greater desire. But it's still within the pattern, within the area of desire. And what's wrong with the desire? I see something nice, pleasant, striking. By the very looking at it, there is a sensation, there is desire out of it. Isn't that so? Please, this is not a talk. We must. And thought comes and gives that desires a continuity and vitality. And from that, there is this seeking of pleasure. I think this is fairly simple, isn't it? The verbal explanation, but the explanation is not the fact, it's not what you discover. If you discovered it, it becomes tremendously vital. If I discover how thought strengthens desire by thinking about something which has pleased me, sensually or intellectually or a sunset or anything, by thinking about it, it has strengthened the nature of desire and has given it a continuity, and that continuity becomes pleasure. All our attitudes and values and demands are based on this search for comfort and pleasure. And is it possible for thought not to interfere? Now, I see something very beautiful. And there's immediate sensation and a desire to touch it, to hold it, to own it, to possess it. Then thought comes in. And is it possible to look at something extraordinarily beautiful? And woman, child, tree, a house, a picture, whatever it is, and merely observe without the interference of thought? And when thought interferes, there is a totally different kind of action. As when thought doesn't interfere with desire. You understand? Yeah. You understand? When thought interferes with desire, which becomes pleasure, then activity has a different meaning altogether. Action. And when thought doesn't interfere with desire, there is again a totally different action which is not time binding. So all this is, we are inquiring, aren't we, into the nature or come upon that thing which we call love. And we're asking if that love is something not of the same energy as hate. We must bear that in mind, otherwise we wander away from the central question. And to answer that question, really, one has to, hasn't one, to free the mind from desire and pleasure, to find out. Gentlemen asks how. Is there a how? Is there a method? Listen to the questions. Is there a method to free the mind from pleasure? Huh? And the following of a method in order to achieve the result is again based on pleasure. No?
B2 flat 301, third floor B block, Mantry Elegance, BTM layout.
So there is no how. There is only a state of listening. And when one listens so totally, this question is answered. You see, first of all, sir, how do you look at anything totally? You say it's not possible. And when you say it is not possible, you have already blocked yourself from finding out. So to find out, you have to look at your own mind, looking at your friend or somebody or at a tree, how you look at it. Why do we create an image of that and hold it? And is it not possible at the moment of experience to live it so completely, or so let it go through you so that no image remains, no mark remains? Please, these are all questions that are really have to be answered not by words, but by actual direct perception and discovery. And to find out anything new requires tremendous inquiry, meditation. You don't just get it by just coming to a meeting for an hour. I'm thinking one has to work tremendously hard. You do work very hard to earn a livelihood, go to office every day. But this requires much more much more careful examination. And one doesn't have the energy, the patience, or the interest, because this is non-profit. It doesn't bring you any profit, financial or any other.
Love, the permanent escape of suffering.
Do we know what suffering is? Do you really know what suffering is? Only we know it when we remain, right? We don't remain with anything. Huh? Do we? We think about it. Let us take the question of suffering. Is it, first of all, is it possible to end it? Totally, without becoming hard, brutal, pressure, and all the rest of it. And to go to the very end of it and find out. Can we do that one thing this afternoon? Huh? Shall we? I suffer. Why do I suffer? And what is this nature of suffering? I suffer because I've lost my son, my mother, sister, or somebody doesn't love me, or I cannot fulfill, or I'm thwarted. I haven't got a good grade and somebody else has a good grade. And I know what it means to suffer. In suffering, there is a great deal of self-pity. And suffering, I want to escape because I don't know how to resolve. And I have a network of escapes. Now, can I stop from escape? And it's very difficult because escaping is so subtle. I can escape by turning on the radio, magazine, talking to somebody, and so on, so on. But the thing remains, and I don't want to get in touch with it. It's too painful, too agonizing. I push it away. So can I stop from escaping altogether and just look at it, live with it, know it? Not suppress it, not control it, not sublimate it, not do all that kind of idiotic stuff, but get to know it, live with it, go into it.
You say, be quiet. You do give an answer. And that's why just be quiet. Why not speak? Why not see? Why not hear? Why not do? Why not think?
So we went into that. We have thought a great deal about suffering. Volumes have been written by religious people and all the rest of it. And yet we suffer. Suffering apparently is a daily affair. And a man asks, is it possible to end it? And when says, please tell me how to end it, then is that thinking? Is that examining? Or you're merely wanting a result which will be greatly pleasurable when the suffering ends? Obviously, you think it'll be tremendous pleasure. There'll be great pleasure. So one follows the method in order to have that pleasure. But there is no understanding of suffering. And so when there is no understanding of suffering, it comes in another form. So what we are trying to do is to find out for oneself whether it is possible to end this thing that we would call suffering, in which is involved self-pity, loneliness, all that.
What is the understand section?
Is it necessary to suffer in order to understand? In order to understand. I think Christianity has made suffering into something holy. By suffering, we say we're going to, reach heaven. I think a mind that suffers is the most stupid mind. Doesn't end. So please, sir, come back. What is it we're asking about? What is we're all wanting to find out? What is the mind when it is not quiet? All right. Most of our minds are not quiet, are they? Ceaselessly agitated, active, thinking about something, or soliloquizing, talking to itself, imagining. It is endlessly restless, isn't it? And how do we know any quiet when a mind is so restless? And it may be the nature of the mind never to be quiet. And why are we so restless? Especially in modern world. My tendency, my demand for a particular satisfaction has not been satisfied. And I'm always seeking something which will give me immense satisfaction, and I know there isn't any. So the restless mind may be the result of a neurological state, or restless because we haven't found an answer to anything. An answer in the deep sense of the word to fundamental issues. Therefore, it's nothing to do. It's like a leaf driven all over the place. And without understanding the nature of one's own thinking, which is self-knowing, quietness of the mind is not possible. And to know oneself is the beginning of wisdom. Not in a book, not in psychology, all that. Wisdom is in knowing oneself. It comes out of the soil of self-knowing.
This has been the fifth of 8 programs presenting the talks of Krishnamurti. Subsequent programs in this series are titled Questioning, Living and Death, and The End of Conflict.
This is NET, the National Educational Television Network.
Yes, Harshad bhai.
Hello, Dubey and friends. This topic, what is love? I think the way Krishna ji talks about love is, it seems that it is a very rare phenomenon, because the way Krishna ji talks about love, it means that one has to be really free from suffering, free from all that fear and anger and desire and all that, and be in touch with what is going on. And it is a kind of a purifying process. It seems love is a kind of energy, which Krishna ji says, a different kind of energy. Like anger is energy, but when you get angry, you lose energy. But when there is a love, you feel very energetic. And but that requires a mind which is very, very clear and very silent, and able to look at everything without the previous knowledge, without images. And so when there is no self, there is that state of love. In Krishnaji's way, but I do not feel entirely that way, that yes, love is possible when there is no expectations, when there are really good feelings, which doesn't depend on our mood and circumstances, but some kind of clarity of the mind. And it can be for one person or it can be for many persons. And it doesn't mean that it is just a silent state without any feeling. Feeling can exist, but it is a very healthy feeling, not a feeling of attachment or jealousy and all that. So what I would say that love is a very purifying process and a very beautiful thing. And without love, life is meaningless. It is just a mechanical uh, going day after day. And sometimes young people, when they first time what they call fall in love, they may have that feeling of what Krishna ji describes. But when they come together and live together and they form images about each other, and then that feeling of pure looking, it goes away. And then there are many images and there are many conflicts. And so that kind of love is destroyed. So this is what I have to say, that love in relationship is a purifying process as it reveals the ways of the self. And that sentence of Krishna ji made me look again and again at my own mind in a relationship. And I would say that yes, it is a purifying process where you begin to understand your own self. If there is a jealousy, you can look at it. If there is an anger, you can look at it without condemning it and really understanding it and then being free from it. Okay, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. I think I agree with what Harshad bhai just mentioned. I think a state of mind where the self is not dominant. Well, self, we can say that is not, uh, directing our thought processes. In that state, there is a sense of deep love, and there is compassion all around. We have all experienced that state where you are not, you can say it in many ways, like you're not expecting anything in return. You are happy with what things, the way things are and so on. But basically, when there is no self-interest at all, that state is a state of love.
Yeah. You would like me to say something,
Yes, please go ahead.
Dubeyji?
Yes, yes, please.
Yes, this is my favorite topic actually, but it is actually a non-verbal thing. Love, beauty. Uh, we can talk, but it is only when we are free from this self and we can look at nature, we can look at human beings, and we feel that everything feels very beautiful, very fresh, very new. And it is a kind of a renewing process of it's cleaning process. And of course, there are so many songs, even in Hindi language or Gujarati language, it describes what Krishna ji is saying, and it says that prem prem sab koi kahe, par prem na jane koi. जो कोई जाने जगत में फिर जुदा रहे न कोई. That means everybody talks about love, but who feels love? Because a person who feels love will not remain separate from the world. So this is many poets have expressed their feeling, which is very similar to what Krishna ji is talking about, that where there is no sense of separation, when the observer and the observed are one, and that state Advaita, which they call it, that is the state of love. And that is a very rare phenomenon. We all generally know about love with attachment and which creates fear, anger, jealousy. But a person who goes through all these problems and then is very sensitive, the person, and he has the ability to look inward, and he has the ability to ask questions whether is it possible to be free from jealousy or anger or fear, and then that person's mind becomes very silent and he begins to understand himself as he is and not pretending, not trying to hide anything. Then there is some kind of openness, a kind of spontaneous way of living comes. And in that, the whole world looks very bright and beautiful. And so uh, I will maybe talk, let other people speak.
Anybody else would like to say something?
Something what Krishna ji said is a very strong statement. Like it is a stupid mind which suffers. In a way, I would say suffering goes in the life of all human beings, including Krishna ji. That when his brother died, Krishna ji suffered for several days and he was crying. So people go through suffering, but when they begin to really turn inward and begin to look what is behind this suffering, I think Krishna ji was attached to his brother, and Krishna ji had a feeling that Nitya, his brother, will not be allowed to die by the masters. But when the news came that Nitya has died, Krishna ji cried for many days. So suffering we all go through, but some people, they deteriorate when they suffer, and some people, when they begin to look inward and not blame anybody and begin to understand their own whole mind, the whole mechanism of how suffering comes, how attachment creates fear, anger, and all that. So when that clear understanding comes through suffering, then there is the freedom. So even Buddha said that there is suffering in the world, there is a cause for suffering, there is an understanding of suffering, and then there is a freedom from suffering. So it is a very few people can go all the way to look deeper and not escape from suffering into dreams or some kind of philosophy, some kind of consolation from our teachers. So it's very easy to escape. But when a person doesn't escape and turn the attention inward and begin to look clearly at his own mind, then comes this clarity. And maybe I feel that even then, some kind of blessing is required. And maybe the blessing comes from somewhere which we don't know. Even in the life of Krishnamurti, something was coming and going, and he was aware of it, that suddenly it came. So there is something even beyond our mind, our thinking mind. And it is a mystery. And many people have felt such mystery. And Krishna ji also says that there is a mystery beyond the power and capacities of the mind. So this thinking mind is not all. Even this awareness which we talk about, which is different than thinking, that is also not all. But there is something, a greater awareness or cosmic consciousness or God or whatever we call it. So that blessings come in some human beings and we cannot go after it. It comes to you when you qualify for it. That means you have really looked very deeply and things are cleared up and then something comes. And I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm not speculating. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Shiva Kumar, please unmute yourself.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
It is what I know about love, compassion, beauty is what I heard either from Krishnamurti or from other philosophers or sages. Somewhere deep down, I already have an idea. Though I may say, like, love can't be verbalized. It is beyond emotion. It is beyond feeling. And we, even when we say love is not, and then say, like, when there is self-acting, love is not, when so many things, right? Even there, in a negative approach, what is not love, I approach in that way. Somewhere there is already an idea what love is. Even though we try to say, like, when we understand suffering, when we are beyond desire, when I am beyond me, or something deeper, or is it is beyond all this. So when we make this kind of statements, when we hear from various philosophies and other things, so somewhere, like, we already have an idea of love. though we might not say like it's beyond words, but deep down somewhere, like, we have a sense like, okay, I'm one with everybody. I'm one with the world. I'm beyond self, right? So this goes on, this keeps going on. Somewhere, like, all this also creates a desire in a very subtle way, though we say desire is beyond thought and all that, in a very subtle way. We want to go to that state of being, if at all. Okay, again, there's another word, like, love is not emotion, not feeling, it's a state of being, right? So somewhere, like, I want to reach that state of being. There is a kind of seeking. So in what way this is different? Yes, like, we understand K, like, we have read so many years, 30 years, 40 years. But deep down, there is all the time this seeking in a very subtle way. Even when we say awareness, like, we already have an idea. Okay, so awareness is not something I can seek or I can get it. Like, it is something like, when you are with what is, probably that comes in, right? I can't be aware. Like, obviously when we say observer and observed, one, and like, when we say all that, still I somewhere, like, that sense of seeking is very much there. Yes, in the earlier talks, if we see in 1929 to 30, 31, 33, 34 earlier talks, K talked about like a effort, talked about like, putting energy, talk about like, living that life. But then as he moved on after 60s, like, there's a lot of difference. Okay, there's a kind of maturity in terms of the words which he used. But if you go and see in the earlier talks, like, there is a, like, though effort in the sense, like, not the kind of losing energy, not like, trying to, like, move away from what is and trying to resist what is. Of course, not in that sense, but somewhere, like, there has to be an attempt to be aware. Though we know very well the awareness has to come in, but somewhere there is some kind of subtle movement is very much required. Though you might not use the word, something is required for one to move in this direction. But then, like, with very clear cut, like, understanding that, like, all that what we say about love, all that what we say about compassion is not that. With that awareness, can one just be here and now? Not again as a conclusion, not again as a, like, okay, yeah, from morning to evening, I'll be here and now. No, like, just be with what is, and not trying to, like, end the suffering, like, I will try to end suffering. Somewhere, like, all the time, there's a mind that is coming in. Any single thought, like, the mind is already, like, energized, and it is already moving, taking you in that direction. So going beyond mind, beyond verbal. So is there a place for the mind to do something there? To go beyond mind, to go beyond words? Can we use words? Or is it just like, just be attentive with what is happening surrounding, without, like, that itself is a life, like, not with the intention of, like, one day I'll be more loving, more compassionate, or some way, like, we wanted to, like, extend ourselves, like, our love to our neighbors and surroundings, love in the common sense. Okay, I will, like, go beyond country, I'll go beyond nationalism, I'll go beyond casteism, and I will approach everybody as one, and that way my self is extended, but still that self is what is working there. So even just the circumference has broadened up. So all this vicious thinking, vicious way of things happens, like, when we go through all this. So can one be aware of all this? Sorry, I took a lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you have covered a great deal of the issues that we all face. But let me say this with my own experience, and I'm sure it's not my experience alone. All of us face that kind of situation where there are moments where our expression or feeling of love comes out of attachment, our desire to get something. We are aware of that experience. We are also aware of that experience where it is spontaneous. There is nothing to be gained. It's a state of mind which is absolutely quiet and full of energy, full of compassion. We all experience that. So can't we see the difference in these two? I think when Krishna talks about love, it's a state where, you are just being with what is. You are not desiring anything. There is no expectation, nothing to be gained from anything. It's not that you are trying to reach that state through effort and all that, but it comes to all of us. Now, this is an important thing, that how do you come to that stage? Like Harshad Bhai very often uses, I think the mind has to be free. It has to start from freedom. That is the first step, which means to reach that stage, one has to make effort. And another thing I would like to say that, Krishna himself is on record saying that my talks or my writings before 1933 should not be taken into importance, it should not be read. So I think we should honor his words, because I have quite a lot of recordings and speeches of Krishna before 33, especially in 27, 28, and so on, where he has talked about processes, the method and all that. But he says not to look into it, so we should concentrate only from writings or speeches after 33, 34. Yeah, this is what I want to say. Yeah.
Sir. Subha, sir.
Yes, Kamlesh ji, please go ahead.
Sir, I want to say one thing, that in the daily life, we have to live life as a relationship only.
Yes.
So there are involved images also. So one must understand what image he is personally having about the person who is relating, with whom he is relating. So he has to be very vigilant about the whole of the issue in relating with people and everything. And only a few people can be free from whole of the images and all that. But at least one can start, one can be attentive, one can be aware. At least some images are not interfering in his relationship. And that is the part of the self which is very subtly involving in day-to-day interactions without the knowledge of the person. So one must be very attentive and vigilant, and all the relationships in the worldly affairs like family matters, brothers and sisters and all that, they may be partial, but they are also important for a person. As JK has also said that life is a series of relationships. I don't know that he has said series of relationships, but I take it that it is a series of relationships going on with ourselves involved in the center, and all other persons which are coming in our life, they are supplementing us, but at the same time they are giving us opportunity to understand about ourselves. So we should employ that opportunity and understand ourselves in relationship in day-to-day life also. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Kamlesh
Yes, sir.
Very right.
What you wanted to say, sir?
I want to say that what you have said is absolutely correct, because that's the way we have, that's the way we think, that's the way we look at our daily life. And there's no denying that one can know about oneself only through relationships. But this is also a fact that the kind of love Krishna talks about, we have all experienced it, maybe for a fleeting moment, but we have experienced that love, which means that it's possible to have that kind of state of mind where there is no self at all. So it's possible if you are aware and if you have quieter mind, it's not chattering all the time. It's possible to be in that state. This is what I want to say. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Means what you wanted to say that image and the self should not interfere when interacting with people, and that instances and that those moments can come. Those moments come and go.
What I'm saying is that
Are you saying that, sir? Dubey sir?
what I'm saying is that most of the time when we interact with people, our self comes in the picture. But if there is awareness, we can see that the moment awareness comes, then the quality of that relationship changes. So we are aware of those both cases, and it's very common to have a relationship based on self-interest. That is the norm. That is what, if you can say, people like ordinary people like us, 90% of the time our relationship based on give and take. But there are moments where any relationship, not necessarily with a some friend or anybody, you're traveling in a train and you meet somebody, suddenly then the self is not yet able to see the man as he is and still have friendship with him. So there's no give and take there. It's possible to have that relation.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it is easy to have a very good relationship with nature, with birds, animals, trees, because they don't react. And we feel very happy because of that. Even little children, we feel very happy because they are very innocent and they don't have any images about us. So everybody loves children, and because of the innocence. Uh, Very difficult for two people, adults who are living together, and they are registering the images about each other and then looking through those images, then it becomes very mechanical kind of relationship. But what Krishnaji is talking about, that kind of relationship can happen unexpectedly. We cannot go after it, but it can happen. I remember my first meeting with Krishnaji when he was standing under a tree in Ohio, and we were standing in a queue to get our lunch. And a friend said, "Look, Krishnamurti is standing there. Why don't you go and say hello to him?" But I had nothing to talk with him. I was very shy. But my friend said, "No, you must go." So when I came very close, his eyes were fully open, but there was no mind, nothing. It was just looking at me, and my mind also became like that and became very silent. And then I extended my hand, and he took my hand, and without saying anything, I went back. And in that moment, I understood what Krishnaji is saying about a relationship when two people, they have no images about each other, but they are fully alert, awake, not dreaming or anything like that. So such relationship is possible with even people whom we meet for the first time, whom we don't know, and suddenly something begins to happen, a kind of a resonance between two people. So such thing happens, but to live daily with somebody and still to have that kind of freshness is very difficult. And if you have read biography of Krishnamurti, then you may find even Krishnaji had a lot of difficulty with Raja Gopal and Rosalind and other people. So it is a blessing when our mind is very silent and we are not expecting, we are looking, everything is very fresh. And then you can look at a human being or a tree or a flower or a cloud and you feel wonderful. So that state of freedom I would call love, but we cannot go after it. It comes to us when we have really worked looking at ourselves clearly. And intellect and logic, I think it comes in that kind of relationship where people use intellect to understand even Krishnamurti, then that kind of relationship will not exist because a person is trying to understand the words of Krishnamurti and not what is behind the word, which comes with the word, but that one has to feel it non-verbally. And that cannot be taught, but sensitive people can catch something behind the word, and then there is a kind of a relationship. Sometimes it happens between a musician and a listener when they are together with the same level, same intensity, same feeling, but not thinking and no intellect, not trying to understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shiva. Yes, Lakshmi, please go ahead.
Namaste. I'm very happy to listen to this topic. You see, real love, generally we identify ourselves with the mind and with the body. We are habituated to identify with the mind. That is why everything we look through the mind. Even love also we try to understand with the mind. Even the eternity we see with the mind only. That is why we are feeling this type of confusion. Actually, love is our real state. That is our natural state. But we are forgetting our natural state and we are always living in the range of the mind. That is why here relation means not only with the people, with the nature, with my what we say property, all these things. So if the mind is still, then only love springs up. As long as the mind is working, we are trying to understand even love with the mind. That is why a husband is loving the wife, he's loving himself in that thinking that he's loving his wife. Same, a lover is loving himself. Because if the lover is according to his whims and fancies, if he gets comfort, if he gets all the things, whatever he requires, then he is loving the lover, means he's loving himself. So here we are accustomed to see with the mind and we identify with the mind. That is why we are feeling difficult to, this mind is the obstruction to see the reality. And the reality is, the real nature is love. Our real nature is love. But because we are occupied with the mental activities and identify with the mind, we are not experiencing our real nature love. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you. Then, Saab, would you like to say something? Unmute yourself.
Nothing. I don't want to.
Okay.
Only love is there.
Yes, Gokte Saab, please unmute yourself. Unmute kar le. अनम्यूट करिए, अनम्यूट नहीं हुआ, अनम्यूट।
अच्छा हो गया सर?
हाँ, अब हो गया।
हो गया।
हाँ जी।
कबीर ने कहा है, प्रेम में गली अति साखरी तामे दोनों समाये, मैं था तो हरि नहीं, हरि था तो मैं नहीं। तो यहाँ पे मैं से मतलब जब मैं मतलब अहंकार रहता है, when there is ego, then we cannot love others. But when we have no ego, then there is love, and others can feel it. Normally people have ego, so they don't have love for others. Those who don't have ego, much ego, they have love and they are compassionate. I have to say only this much.
Okay, thank you. There are not many questions coming up now. So, Harshad bhai, what do we do? Should we close it now?
Just one second, I'd like to say
Yeah, please go
that
ahead.
even in this Urdu shairi, like Galib, इश्क पर जोर नहीं है वो आतिश गालिब कि लगाए न लगे और बुझाए न बुझे. So it is not something which we can ignite, this love, by will or desire. It exists when will and desire does not exist. So many people have said in their own word, and I'm sure people must have felt it. But it it cannot be retained day after day. And generally, people feel it once and then it goes away, and then they like to get it back to it, but it doesn't come. So there are some in commentaries on living, some people had felt that kind of newness, looking at everything without this self, and it came and went back, and then they wanted to get it back, but they were not getting, and then they came to Krishnamurti and wanted how they can get it back to that state. And Krishnamurti said, it came to you uninvited, so you cannot go after it, but it may come to you if it comes at all. So we cannot go after this quality which Krishnaji is describing, where the mind is not, where everything is so clear, fresh, new. And Krishnaji writes that every time he is looking everything new every day, looking at the same tree or the same flower. So with nature, it is possible that way. But with human beings, it may be more difficult. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Harshad bhai. Yes, Mr. Shiva Kumar, please go ahead.
Yeah. Personally, I any statement that comes out of me, I just wonder, why this statement has come. What is the motive behind that statement? Many times, sometimes we say, this is very difficult. The moment we say that it's difficult, of course, that was there in today's video also. Right? We already conclude, it is difficult and it becomes impossible. Right? So that same subtle thought comes and says, look, okay, it is very difficult to be in egoless state. So you have to put a lot of effort. You have to work towards it. So this thinking is in the time frame, and it is moving away from just observing what is happening. Right? And when we say, suppose, still mind is love. I really don't know, how can the mind be still? Is it a mind which is totally silent, devoid of all thoughts? Or is it some intelligence that takes care of the functioning of the mind, that puts thoughts in its right place? It doesn't mean there should not be thought at all. Somebody said, it's identification of the thought is the problem, but the thought per se is not the problem. Right? So thought is a problem when I do anything with it. But if in that awareness, if that intelligence, that puts thoughts in the right place in the functional world, and that becomes more effective, where me as an ego is not having much say in those thoughts. I don't know whether I'm able to put it across. So many speculative statements, it is difficult, it should be still mind, it is this, it is that, all this, very clearly it is arising in me within that moment. We all know time, life is in the moment. It is in the moment. It cannot be after a moment or before a moment. After a moment or before a moment is not life as such, right? It is only the brain, memory, thinking, that is where it has a place before or after that moment, right? So life is in that moment. In that moment, anything that arises from me is out of memory. It is out of my brain. It is what is there inside me says this is difficult, or it says like, my mind has to come to a still so that the love will be there. This is, from where did I pick this up? It certainly I would have picked up from somebody else. or if I say it is out of my own experience, it can't be experienced as such. That's one of the reasons when we say it is a state of being. If after, I don't know what actually the state of being, when K says it's a state of being, it's beyond emotion and feeling. So there can't be any feeling, there can't be any emotion attached to this love. So finally, it boils down to one, and the only thing is, can I just live, forget everything and live at that moment? Living with that moment here and now. And like, yeah, there will be a lot of time. Okay, most of the time we are not there, right? Like, so then am I aware that I am not in the presence many times? That awareness itself is a presence. That's why like K talks about like when you are inattentive, don't try to be attentive, right? Okay, trying to be attentive is moving away from inattention. As a result, like you are coming to picture, and taking that inattention to trying to be attentive is still the thought process. So if I am aware I'm inattentive, that itself is an attention, right? So same thing, if at all I have to extrapolate, can I be in that moment and just be there, and not with the intentions of achieving something or achieving still mind, or already, because anything I approach is already like, loaded with all thinking process, with all knowledge. So much of knowledge I already have. Lot of knowledge of K itself is probably like, a problem where like, I approach many of these things with the K's thoughts. It's not the K as a problem, but my understanding of K, my knowledge about K for last 20, 30 years, all that knowledge is coming in between to be at that moment. So because I already have, okay, let me be still, let me be silent, let me observe my suffering. So all this is the one which is really taking me away from that subtle moment of being with what is. Yeah, that's it, what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have very rightly said. But the question of a still mind or a quiet mind, I think it becomes purely intellectual. But a mind where the thought is not interfering, is not creating any problems, that state of the mind is the one which can see things as they are and see or perhaps feel love. But love is not something which can be experienced, because experience becomes a memory, part of your knowledge. But love is not something which can be experienced and stored in the memory. It is something which you have it in that moment, and that's it. The moment you are aware of this, it's no more love.
Pradeep Prakash ji.
No, he has not raised his hand. I think it's almost 7:20, so we can close it 10 minutes before our scheduled time. And to make an announcement that next Sunday we'll have Mr. Rajan Chandi from Rishi Valley. He'll be speaking to us, and the timing is 11 o'clock. Please make a note of it. We are having our sessions only at 10 o'clock from 1st June, but Rajan has a class or something, so he wants it to be at 11 o'clock. So keeping that in mind, we have kept his talk at 11 o'clock. And the theme of his talk is The Future is Now. So if you're free, please do join us on 2nd of July at 11 a.m. Please note the change in time. After that, we'll decide who will be the speaker and so on. With these words, we can close this session. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you.